If haunted places are on your summer bucket list, make sure this one is at the top. This is America's Most Haunted Lighthouses, East Coast Edition. I'm Becca. I like to talk about ghosts and the paranormal. Make sure you follow along for this series. This is the Concord Point Lighthouse in Havre de Grace, Maryland. It was built in the early 1820s. It's right where the Susquehanna meets the Chesapeake Bay. After so many shipwrecks happened here, Maryland decided that it needed a lighthouse. For decades, the O'Neill family kept this light burning. But that history isn't the only thing that people remember. In 1889, the lighthouse keeper said that he saw a face staring back at him from the lantern room. Now, he said that he saw these glowing eyes, and when the light hit them, they sparkled. He said staring at the eyes were burning his eyes. And then something weird happened. This weird smell of flowers and cologne. Now, the flowers and the cologne are one of the most reported ghost stories tied to this lighthouse. People also report seeing slow-moving shadow figures up here in the windows. They also see dark shadow figures walking around outside, especially near the cannons. Today, this lighthouse is a museum, but apparently they also do paranormal investigations here once in a while. If you're visiting Havre de Grace this summer, maybe stop by and take a picture with the lighthouse. Maybe you'll catch a ghost in one of your photos. If you've been here, if you've had an experience here, leave me a comment down below. I want to know. And don't forget to follow along for more ghost stories. Don't forget to stop back tomorrow for more haunted lighthouses. They just get creepier.
A virus has my cruise ship quarantined. Welcome back to Creepy Crochet and Creepy Pasta. Let's get into today's scary story. I knew going on a cruise was a bad idea. I've always hated water, but who doesn't have that deep-seated fear of what lurks beneath the waves? More than water, though, I really hated people. That's why my wife wanted me to come in the first place. She told me it would help me relax and break me out of my shell. She's dead now, but hey, at least she tried. Ironically enough, it was her need to mingle on deck that got her killed. I should have been with her. I should have never let her leave my side, but how was I supposed to know this would happen? How was I supposed to know that the last words to my wife were going to be lies? I have a headache. The waves are making me queasy. I think I'm going to stay back and rest for a while. Anything to get her out of my hair so that I could avoid socialization. But what difference did it make? I'm probably going to be dead soon too. If not by those things outside, then by thirst or starvation, I'm sure. I don't think anyone's coming to save us. Everything just happened so suddenly. One minute I'm napping, the next minute I'm jolted awake by the ship coming to a complete stop out in the middle of nowhere. As I rose out of bed and wiped the sleep from my eyes, that's when I noticed the screaming. One blood-curdling scream that eventually built into a cascade of ravenous outcries. It was enough to keep me glued to the floor in my room. I tried to swallow my fears, and as soon as my hand touched the door handle, the knocking began. A woman was on the other side of the door, banging like her life depended on it and solidifying that idea by begging for me to open the door. My blood ran cold. My body froze again. I hesitated. And before I could regain my senses, the begging stopped. Silence didn't replace the sounds, though. No. The sounds of begging and knocking were replaced by what sounded like that poor lady getting tackled. I heard flesh tearing, bones breaking, and worst of all, what sounded like the grunts and growls of a rabid animal tearing into its next meal. I checked the peephole. It wasn't an animal. Instead, what I found was one of the lifeguards, still dressed in uniform, devouring this woman's stomach while she convulsed on the ground. That's when the power went out, leaving me alone in the darkness, rocking back and forth against the waves below. Blood began to seep under the door, soaking the carpet and threatening to touch my feet. The thought of my wife hit me like a truck. She was still out there. I had no idea if she was safe. I had no idea where she was, and the only hope I had was my cell phone. I plucked the phone from my pocket, intending to dial my wife, but was cut off by a news alert on my home screen. Mysterious viral outbreak aboard cruise ship in the Atlantic. WHO on high alert. I heard choppers circling overhead and felt momentary relief that maybe this would all be over soon. Unfortunately, those hopes were dashed when, through the whirring of the helicopter blades, gunshots began to ring off in seemingly every direction. I didn't hear screams, though. All I heard were footsteps, fast ones, scurrying around outside my room only to be moved down by the heavy gunfire from above. I called my wife with shaky hands. It rang once, twice, 3 times before I heard the chime of a ringtone from the other side of the door. I hung up and approached the door slowly. That's when I heard her, the sweet, sweet voice of my wife, begging me to let her in, begging me to come outside and join her. This was 3 days ago. I've resisted the temptation, but now there are more voices, more scratches at the door. More people begging me to let them in and join them. I don't want to die alone in here. I don't want to waste away from thirst or starvation. I'm writing this now to let you all know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but I have to join them. It's what she would want.
Here are more spooky stories that I found in my TikTok comments. Let's go! So tonight, actually, about 30 minutes ago, I'm giving my 6-month-old son a bath in the kitchen, and I'm singing to him Once Upon a December from Anastasia. Love that song, by the way. And he is all relaxed, so I stop singing and continue giving him a bath. Out of nowhere, I heard from the living room what sounded like my own singing voice singing Once Upon a December. Keep in mind, Grey's Anatomy was on in the other room, and I'm quite certain it didn't have that on the episode. I stopped giving him a bath for a second and debated on if I should go to the living room with him to see what was going on. Then just decided against it because hell no. When I was younger, I shared a room with my baby brother, so I just settled to go to bed when I heard a knocking sound, like in those horror movies with the really heavy doors. It knocked 3 times, and it gave me chills so bad I froze. My dog started barking next to me, so I ran out. I saw my mom, who thought it was me. She heard it on the baby monitor. What's weird is that we shared a wall and the walls were really thin, so why didn't she hear it through the wall? I never slept in that room again. I was 6 years old. I'm a boy, by the way, and I have 3 sisters. Our couch is in the shape of a U, and my oldest sister was on the bottom part, and I was laying on the floor with my back to her. The other 2 sisters were on the couch to the left. I'm sitting there watching TV, and I guess my sister forgets I'm down there, because she's on her phone, but she looks over 20 feet to the right of us, across the dining room, into my bedroom, and my door was left open. She swears she saw a figure that was the same size and shape as me, just all black, and it ran and jumped over the end of my bed out of view. So she called out my name, and I looked up and said, "Yeah, what's up?" And she looked down with a horrified expression and said, "Oh, it's nothing." They didn't tell me this story until I was 14. I do a lot of weird things in my sleep. I sit up and open my eyes every night, and I know that from sharing a room with my sister, I downloaded an app because I talk in my sleep, and I wanted to know what I was saying every morning. When I listened to the recordings, I only said one word, which I thought was very weird. I was talking with my friends, and she suggested we combine the videos. When we tried it, it formed a sentence, but it wasn't finished. I said, "He's here. He is in the corner. Why is helping that help me? I don't know what comes next, but I will update tomorrow." Yes, please update. I must know the end of your sentence. One time I woke up and couldn't find my husband. He was out in the car, still asleep. It was started too. Bro got up, walked to the car, turned it on, and then just sat there. Anyways, we don't have push to start anymore. I once fell asleep before my boyfriend. He went to the bathroom and then came back. He opened the door to me, sat up, pointing at him, laughing. He kept walking around the room, calling my name to try and subtly wake me up. But all I did was follow him around the room, still laughing and pointing. He held me, asking what was going on. All I said was, "You're wearing a funny costume," and fell back asleep. I do not remember this at all. The year my boyfriend and I moved into our apartment about 5.5 years ago, we both woke up at the exact same time one night. I woke up because I heard him calling my name, and my boyfriend woke up because he thought I was calling his. Of course, neither of us had actually done that. We had both been asleep. Over the following months, we often woke up in the middle of the night because it sounded like someone was ringing our doorbell. Every time we went to check who was there, no one was outside. Then all of a sudden, everything stopped, and nothing strange happened for years, until about 2 months ago. At the time, I was working night shifts. When I got home one morning, I noticed that my boyfriend had forgotten the lunch I packed for him the previous afternoon. I didn't think much of it, so I took a shower and went to bed. Later, I woke up to the sound of the front door opening. I heard someone come inside and immediately walk into the bathroom next to the entrance. I could even hear him urinating. I didn't pay much attention because my boyfriend always does that when he gets home, so I assumed he had quickly come back to pick up the lunch he had forgotten. I was still very sleepy, so I simply went back to sleep. When my boyfriend came home later that day, I mentioned what had happened. He looked at me in complete confusion and was genuinely disturbed. He insisted that he had not been home since he left for work that morning. I checked the refrigerator and the packed lunch was still in there. The strangest part was that I woke up for real later and went to the bathroom myself. I noticed that the toilet seat had been left up. My boyfriend was completely shaken and swore that it wasn't him. Since that incident, nothing unusual has happened since. I feel like maybe you should get a security camera. As always, I love these stories, and I will keep reading them as long as you keep sending them. Okay, bye!
What's the craziest thing you've ever seen at a high school party? Now, I've seen a lot, but I wasn't at this particular party, but my brother was supposed to go, and he was like sick that night, so he decided to stay home, but boy, I'm glad he did. There was a bonfire that our friends were having, more his friends than mine, but some of my friends also showed up, and I was doing something else that night, who knows, but I didn't go either, also glad I didn't, okay? So they're all sitting around the fire. Now, there was this kid who was kind of a show-off a little bit, right? Like, obviously, he had a rough upbringing, upbringing. He was very like edgelordy, and he always had to like one up everybody because he was just trying to get friends in hindsight. Honestly, it was sad, okay? And so he had a bottle of Everclear. If you know, you know. It is like the mecca of holy shit, don't drink that, right? Especially if you're, you know what I mean. So anywho, everybody's out there and they're drinking it and they're having a good time and they're by the bonfire and they're roasting marshmallows and whatever the fuck else you do in high school at a bonfire, right? And so this guy thought it would be cool if he poured the Everclear on the fire. Well, as he went to do that, someone else got dosed on the way, and then it went yeah. This girl was beautiful, and she destroyed her face and her body, and it was really fucking horrible. And I think basically it was like about this much of her face and like some of her upper body, but she got. And yeah, it was really bad. And then her parents obviously sued the living fuck out of my friend's parents because it was at their house. They knew there were kids over there. They knew what they were up to. They didn't know this would ever happen. They were just kind of like laissez-faire parents who were like, well, if you're going to do it anywhere, do it here type shit. And yeah, it was a very different vibe at their house after that. Anywho, what fucking happened to you? I want to hear the craziest stories, dude. Please put them in the comments. Life is short. I know there's so many stories across America. I'm always interested in new ones. My name's RJ. I tell stories on this account every day. If you find that interesting, follow. If not, I don't know how you made it to the end of this video.
A friend of mine was home alone one night and he took this photo of his cat because he kept looking in one particular spot. This lasted for about 5 minutes. In the moment, there was absolutely nothing there. But when he looked back at the photo he took, he saw this. I feed stray cats and I get about 3 to 4 that are usual. I also have a camera pointed at our staircase and get notifications every time it detects motion. It was a night like any other, and I got the notification that somebody was on my staircase. The camera does usually pick up the movement of the cats, so I went ahead and checked to see if they were wandering around. But what I saw was something else, and I can't really explain it. This photo is not mine, and I've probably had it since 2011. The girl in the photo is the sister of one of my brother's friends. In the background, you can clearly see the silhouette of a child. It should be noted that there were no children in that house. Everyone there was above the age of 17. For me, this is the clearest evidence that the paranormal exists.
So I've been getting quite a few scary story submissions from people wanting me to make videos telling their experiences. There are certain stories that I read and I can make the video, no problem. I don't, have any feeling one way or the other. I just tell the story and let it be. This story, I read it a couple hours ago and I just reread it so that I could refresh my memory to make this video, and every hair on the back of my neck stood up. Let's just get into it. This happened in the very tiny town of Wassissa, Florida. It is in Jefferson County, just east of Tallahassee. So he was on his way home from a fishing trip and his GPS had rerouted him on back roads and it took him directly through Wassissa. He said it was super late, close to midnight, and there wasn't another car for as far as he could see. As he was driving through, passing old homes and oak trees, he looked ahead and saw what he thought was a little girl standing beside a rusted mailbox. She wasn't waving, she was just staring at the road. He slowed down because he thought maybe she had wandered away from home, but when he got close enough to really see her, she wasn't there. He said he figured his eyes were just playing tricks on him and he just kept driving. About a mile later, his truck chimed, letting him know that his passenger door wasn't fully locked. He said he knew it was because when he left the boat ramp, he had thrown his tackle box in there and shut the door. So he pulled over, shut the door, and got back in. But that is when he noticed little muddy footprints on the passenger floorboard. Tiny footprints. He keeps his truck very clean and knew that those were not there before, and he hadn't given anybody any rides either. He said he just started the engine, and as he put it in drive, every single warning light on his dash lit up. Then it all went completely dark. Not off, just dark. The only thing still glowing was his backup camera, except he wasn't in reverse. The camera was showing the road behind him, and standing directly behind his tailgate was that same little girl. Only this time she wasn't facing the truck, she was facing towards the woods. He said it looked like she was watching something in the trees, and then he noticed that she raised her arm and pointed her finger. He said she was not pointing at him, she was pointing at whatever was standing behind his truck where the camera could not see. He said the screen suddenly went completely dark, and when it came back on, the footprints were gone. The part that still gets to him is that he never saw the little girl again, but anytime he drives through Wassissa, his backup camera will turn on by itself on that same stretch of road. And every single time it says the same thing across the screen: object detected. But the road behind him is always empty. I've read a few scary stories now, but this is the only one where the scariest part wasn't what someone saw. It was what they never did. Because if something made that little girl stop, turn away, point into those woods, I don't think she was trying to scare him. I think she was trying to warn him. And as always, we love Jesus around here, and we claim no negative energy from any of the spooky, scary stories that I tell. Love you, bye.
I told you guys about when I got attacked by a spirit. I was scratched. Here's the photo again. But there are many instances where I don't have photos. Let's talk about all the things that I believe to be spiritual attacks. I had gotten out of the shower and there was a big bruise that looked like a hand mark on my hip. There was no reason for that to be there. There was another time where I just had scratches down my back and it was a normal day at home. So I have no explanation for that one. There was one time I felt like I got pushed down the stairs. I don't like talking about it because I could very well have just been clumsy, but I could have sworn it felt like somebody's hand was on my back that day. I lived in my grandparents' house, so I don't know. I have many more instances, and if you want to hear about the stories behind each of those, let me know in the comments. Let me know if you've ever been attacked too. And make sure you follow for more.
The Valley of the Headless Men. Yes, this is a real place, and it only gets creepier, so take a seat. So there is a valley in Canada called Nahanni Valley, and this is an area where there are so many mysterious decapitations. So the Nahanni Valley has barely been explored. So it's hard to reach Nahanni Valley. That's why not very many people go there. And a lot of the people that do visit there end up being found without a head, dubbed Valley of the Headless Men. So the city closest to Nahanni Valley is Yellowknife, which is 300 miles away. 311 miles from the closest city. So the easiest way to pretty much get to the Nahanni Valley is via air or water, or you can take a very long dragged out journey to get to Nahanni Valley from the abandoned village of Tungsten. So Nahanni Valley is above the 60th parallel north. So it is one of Canada's wild territories. It is essentially impossible to survive a trip to Nahanni Valley just because of how long the journey is and how dangerous it is. So the main predators in the Nahanni Valley are reportedly timber wolves and grizzly bears. So historically the Dene indigenous tribes were living here first, and there is also another tribe reportedly living there called Naha. So the word Nahanni itself actually means the river of the land of the Naha people. And this is because reportedly the Dene claims that the Naha was a very, very dangerous tribe. They lived high up in the mountains and they would essentially plot and eliminate you. They were a cannibalistic tribe. So the Dene tribe was terrified of the Naha tribe. But the Dene say that the Naha randomly just mysteriously jumped ship and disappeared, ceasing their raids and never coming back. Reportedly, it's not known where they migrated to, if they simply passed on from disease, what happened there. Not sure. So in the early 20th century, at the time of the Klondike Gold Rush, is when people started trying to come to the Nahanni Valley to strike gold. One of these most popular instances where people went up there to try to strike gold and they didn't make it back was Willie and Frank McLeod. So in 1906, they took a canoe up the river to try to get to Nahanni Valley. Nobody has seen them since then, but in 1908, 2 years later, their skeletons were found, completely headless. Reportedly, they were asleep when they got eliminated. One of their brother's bodies' arms was reaching out, trying to reach towards a gun, meaning he was trying to defend himself in his last moments. And reportedly, there was a third man who was one of their companions, surnamed Ware, was missing. So that story was just one of many. One of the most popular stories of the Headless Men in this valley. So Why did they have no head? So some believe that it was simply just an animal attack, which to me that sounds way less likely. Another take is that they lay the corpses like this as a warning to trespassers, saying don't come on our territory, which to me does sound probably more plausible. So in 1917, a Swiss prospector named Martin Jorgensen was discovered decapitated next to his cabin, which was burned to the ground. Apparently he struck gold, and he actually wrote about striking gold on his way back home, but that was before he was beheaded. There are very, very many different people who have been missing, mysteriously vanished, found headless in this circumstance, but my video is already getting pretty long. It would be extremely long for me to list all of them, but I will put the article in the caption as I always do so you guys can see where I'm getting my information from for these videos. But let me know what you guys think about this topic. This is an extremely interesting topic to me and it's very exciting, so let me know what you guys think. Follow for more creepy shit.
God is protecting us. We've prayed twice and nothing bad is going to happen to us. But we were just in my gym, like we're still here. Oh my gosh. And we're actually both like terrified right now. There was no one in the gym. There was one person in the gym, but he had left at this point. And we were in the mirror room. Like if you go to my gym, you know like where the mirror room is. We were in there literally just like posing, like trying to take content and pictures. And then all of a sudden the lights like turn off, on, off, on, off, on. It's not sense like all the time the lights like, it's like a dial where you can change the brightness, and if you like turn it too far it turns off, and then it turns like if you turn it the other way it turns on. That's what it was doing. And while it was doing this, like yeah, like someone was literally there dialing it back and forth, because that's literally what we do, because if you don't balance it right the lights turn off, and that's what we try to do. But while we were taking the pictures and the content, there are 3 gym bags in there. 2 of them were moving. Mind you, we didn't touch one of them. We slapped like the water ball, like the water, I don't know, but we slapped the one which is like the one right near the entrance. And it would stop like immediately. Yeah, and it pretty much just stops, obviously. But then as we were taking pictures, like the time, like probably like 15 minutes later, the ball is still moving, and we keep looking back at the shadow, like what's going on. Again, no one is in the gym. We only hit 1 ball. All of a sudden, like the lights literally start flickering, like someone is there, like dialing it. And then it happened the first time. We looked at each other like, okay. Oh, that's fine, yeah. Yeah, like it's probably just a sensor light. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go like maybe like turn it back on. All of a sudden it starts like flickering, like someone's trying to do that, and as soon as we start screaming and running, it just stops. And it turned off. And it turned off and it stayed off. Live, I saw a shadow. And as soon as we screamed, it stopped playing with the lights, and the lights just stayed off. Yeah, like, mind you, and after we were like, the first time it turned off, we looked at each other, and then after when we looked at each other, it starts going on and off. We start screaming. As soon as we start screaming and we ran out, it just stopped. I'm not making this up. Like, there's literally cameras in there. We ran. And we can prove to you that like it actually went on and off. It was flickering. And the whole time we were taking the content, the pictures, we kept looking at the entrance because we were both seeing like shadows and the bags swinging. But we're like, okay, maybe like it's just the weight that's moving the bag. But then again, we didn't touch the other bag. And then we like that entrance, we kept looking back there as we're taking pictures. Also, it's the next day. I stayed over at like my friend Leslie's place, and also as we were driving, we looked in the back, like the back window of my car, and it was like foggy, obviously because it's cold. But there were literally 2 like hand claw like marks, like someone dragged their hands down the back. There was like 2 at the back of my car, and it wasn't there before. Oh, and also it's kind of like we told whatever was there that we were scared of the dark, because when we walk in, Alessi accidentally turned it too far when we were trying to change the brightness, and then it turned off, and I literally was like, oh my gosh, like don't do that, like I'm scared of the dark. And she's like, oh, I'm scared of the dark, so we started laughing, and then all of a sudden that happens to us, because it's like we pretty much freaking told it that we were scared of the dark.
Some random guy was saying that when you put your headlights towards this vehicle, you see this. Now, I'm not sure what that is up there, but it looks kind of familiar. Something is going on here, guys, and I don't believe that. Clearly, that's the opposite shape of that symbol, of that logo. Something is going on here, guys, and you see what's up. Like, I don't know why people are doing these things. Like always, I don't know what this is about. I don't know why that shape shows up like that. Clearly, that's the bottom of this. That's why it shows up like that, right? Something is going on here, guys. People are out here piecing things together that don't exist. Or does it exist? Shut up! I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. But something seems strange with this, right? Now, it looks like somebody with a hoodie. Could be a Grim Reaper, could just be a regular person. Could be one of those champion hoodies that have the pointy top. You know what I'm talking about. Shut up! Something is going on here, guys. And I'm not sure why it looks like that when the light hits that symbol. But of course, guys, entertainment purposes only. This is absolutely nothing. People are out here trying to solve mysteries that don't need to be solved because it's not even a mystery. Who knows? Because I don't know. Let me know. I'm out.
Anyone else see paranormal stuff as a kid and your parents try to convince you it's all a dream? But even as adults, you know there was something more to it than that. When I was 3 years old, I was living in this second floor of an apartment. It was just me and my mom and my dad, okay? And one night I wake up and I look out the window because I heard some ruffling going on, all right? It's the middle of the night and I see the trash man. Now, I'm only 3, so I don't really have the cognition to understand what a trash man is, but I see the guy in a giant truck. He's picking up the trash. He's putting it in the truck, and I'm just kind of enamored with it. So I'm just staring at the guy, right? And then the guy kind of notices me, and he tilts his head all the way up to the window, and he grins as big as he can. And that's when I see he doesn't have a face. Yeah, no face. There was a face there, but it was burnt off entirely. And no, I don't mean burn victim. I mean, imagine you put a hot dog on a grill for a year, okay? Completely pitch black with flaking dust coming off of it and chipping everywhere and just looks pretty rough, okay? Something that a human being most likely would not be able to survive, and if they were to, they wouldn't be working, okay? So anywho, this guy looks up at me, he smiles with this really like jagged grin, and his eyes were neon yellow. He had no iris whatsoever. He only had these tiny black beady pupils. So I freak the fuck out, dude. I jump up out of my bed and I go, the trash man's coming to kill me. The trash man's coming to kill. And I wake up my parents. They wake up, what's going on? The trash man. And I'm like pointing, and they run out and they look down. There's no trash man there, and our trash is still there. What are you talking about? What happened here, okay? Quite the thing to just like make up for a kid. And they said it was a dream. You need to go back to bed. You were just having a bad dream, son. You're safe. And so as a little kid, you trust your parents with almost everything. And so you're like, okay, I guess I'm having a bad dream. And so I go back to bed. Well, then a couple nights later, he's out again. I look down. He looks up. He grins. I run back. The trash man's coming. She goes over. There's no trash man out there. And at this point, I'm pissing my father off, right? Like, you don't wake my dad up, okay? So he's angry. Then they get into an argument. So I'm just in here causing drama in my house at this point. And so I slowly over time stop saying something about it. And I just don't look out the window when I wake up in the middle of the night and I hear things. Now, however, one night, there's a thunderstorm. I hear the ruffling down there though, and I know the difference between the thunder, and I'm like, oh, I think he's down there. So I'm petrified. So what I did was I chose to not look out directly. I chose not to look down, right? So I'm in my bed and I'm just looking out the window, right? I'm staring at the tops of trees and there's like a wide open area. I'm watching the rain come down and the lightning cascade in the background, and then a lightning flashes and he's in my window. He's in my window, just grinning at me, dude. So he had to be fucking floating, right? And so that's when I stopped looking out of the window for the rest of my life. And I would constantly tell my parents during the daytime, so I didn't cause any issues, trash man was back again last night. I heard him. The trash man, I felt him in my window. I saw him in my window. I don't look out my window anymore. The trash man's always there. So yeah. My mom to this day says it was all a dream. I don't know where you came up with this notion. You came up with this whole character in your head. I've drawn him before on paper somewhere. It's absolutely terrifying, right? But yeah, anybody else had this happen to them? I do have one other thing that happened along those lines in my room that wasn't the trash man, and he wasn't coming after me. So if you want to hear that story, follow for part 2. My name's RJ. I tell stories on here every day, and if you like that kind of thing.
A ghost visited me at a haunted hotel I stayed at last night. The last thing I told you is I finally fell asleep, and then I had this dream. I was standing at the edge of Niagara Falls, except the water was rushing black. A woman was standing beside me. Her hair was soaking wet, clinging to her face. She whispered something. Don't let them take you too. And then she grabbed my wrist and I woke up gasping. The next morning, I went downstairs, ready to check out early. The same woman from the day prior was working the reception desk. This time she didn't smile, she just stared at me. Did you dream about her? I froze when she asked me this. How could she possibly know what I dreamed about? The woman by the falls. My mouth went dry. I asked, Who is she? The receptionist's fingers tightened around the counter like she was gripping it. She was a guest like you, but she never checked out. This lady was creeping me out, so I grabbed my bag and I headed to my car. I don't know what happened in that room. I don't know who that lady was. But when I left, I checked my wrists and I had bruises where she had grabbed me in the dream. And now I have to be wary because, as all people who ghost hunt know, that thing could have attached to me or followed me home. It wasn't just a creepy hotel. It was like something wanted me there.
I got a really good cryptid story for you, and this one is from one of my followers. Her name is Christina, and she is from Northwest Ohio. Christina grew up in the country surrounded by woods and cornfields, and in the summer, she and her friends would ride bikes down a long, windy road to a campground to go swimming at the pool. So one evening, when they were on their way back home, they were riding down that long, windy road, and they heard something rustling in the corn. So at first, they're kind of listening and just assuming it's a deer, chalking it up to being a deer. But then the sound kept getting louder, more apparent. The kind of sound that makes you stop dead in your tracks. They all kind of said out loud at the same time that it sounded really big, like something big was running through the corn. And the really creepy thing was that when they stopped their bikes to get a better listen, the thing stopped too. Another thing that they were having trouble with was pinpointing exactly where the sound was coming from, because there were cornfields on both sides of the road, and it kind of echoed across, so it was really difficult to tell where it was coming from. She also mentions that this was about late August, so the corn was way taller than any of them, and whatever was in there was completely hidden for now. So they stood there for a little bit, whispering to each other, trying to make sense of what they heard. And then one of them jokingly said, "I told you guys it was just a deer. We must have spooked him." So they all agreed, laughed it off, and kept on pedaling. But deep down, every single one of them knew that was not a deer. So they finally made their way down that long curvy road to the point where they got down underneath a streetlight, and they were not too far from Christina's house at this point. And then once they were sort of in the safety of the streetlight, they all kind of let it out, talking over each other, acting like, "Oh my gosh, we were so scared. We know that was not a deer, right?" And then they heard it. It was a loud, deep howl, long and sustained. So they all get quiet. And now they're scanning down over the fields. And so from their perspective, since they were far enough away from the corn, they could now see down over the tops of the stalks. And guys, something was standing in the middle of the cornfield. Christina describes it as blacker than the night sky around it. She said it was tall and human-like with enormous glowing eyes. It was standing way taller than the corn, and the corn was already towering over them. She says to this day that the closest thing that she can attribute it to might be like a Bigfoot type creature, because it did not look like any animal that she had ever known to exist. And it moved like something that knew exactly what it was doing, just that higher kind of intelligence. So they all hop on their bikes and they are pedaling as fast as they can all the way to Christina's house. And when they hit the front yard, they jumped off their bikes and they turned back one more time just to scan the fields again. Christina said all she could hear was their own breathing, shaking so hard. And then the corn started to move fast, bending in half and breaking as whatever this thing was started charging in their direction through the corn. She said they were across the street and a decent distance away, and they could hear this thing crashing through the stalks. And then it stood up again, glowing eyes beaming at them in the dark. So they all ran in the house and they told Christina's parents. And of course, you know, as the parents always do, they chalked it up to, oh, it was probably just a deer and the howling was probably a coyote or something. And every one of them agreed, no way, nope, was not a coyote. She also said that they never again went down that road at night. And that wasn't the end of it, you guys. So a couple years later, a neighboring farmer started having moments where he would have to fire his GUN at something that was tormenting his horses. It was described as something big and human-like, and they even called the police. Christina's dad even took her out to watch the officers walk the property as they tried to look for whatever this thing was. And they never really found anything other than the horses being completely spooked and freaked out. For a long time after that, she would always see that farmer walking and pacing the edges of his property with his GUN, you know, to try to protect his horses from whatever this was. And get this, Christina's dad kept on blaming it on coyotes. For years, he would chalk it up to coyotes until way later when Christina was no longer a child. Once she was grown and moved away, her dad finally admitted he had seen something too. Something he couldn't explain, but he didn't want to scare the kids. And his description was exactly the same. Tall, human-like, huge eye. And I guess it's still a mystery. So what are your thoughts? I know that Christina will be in the comments checking them out. And if you have a cryptid story of your own, you got to share it. If you're interested in Creepy Storytime merch, check out the link in my bio. And if you're new here, follow for more Creepy Storytime.
In my opinion, if you're a woman and you're planning on having children ever, you should watch this video. A trial just started, which in my opinion is going to be one of the most controversial trials that we will see this year. The case of Lindsay Clancy is one that has a lot of people divided because this is a mother of 3 who killed her children. And the question isn't, did she do it or did she not? The question is, were these premeditated murders or was this postpartum psychosis? There's a lot to this case and we're going to break it down together. But that being said, we're talking about a lot of heavy topics, including children, mental health struggles, and postpartum depression. So if you don't think that you are in the right state of mind to listen to something like this, skip this video and I will see you in my next one. Take care of yourselves. I mean it. I love you. Also keep in mind, this is an ongoing case. Lindsay Clancy has pleaded not guilty to 3 counts of first-degree murder and she is presumed innocent unless proven guilty in a court of law. So before January of 2023, Lindsay Clancy was the type of person that people naturally gravitated towards for comfort. She was the kind of person who dedicated her entire professional career into bringing new life safely into this world. She was a labor and delivery nurse working at Massachusetts General Hospital, where she had worked for 9 years after completing a nursing program. Originally, though, she was born in Connecticut in 1990. In 2016, she married Patrick Clancy and the couple settled in Duxbury, Massachusetts. Patrick and Lindsay had 3 children together. Cora, born in December of 2017, Dawson, born in September of 2019, and Callan, born in May of 2022. 3 kids in 5 years, making it a full house, a full life, a happy one, or at least that's what it seemed like. Because from the outside looking in, the Clancy family did look like a picture-perfect family. They really did. A young, successful, loving family doing everything right. And literally every single person close to Lindsay says that becoming a mother was her greatest accomplishment. We know that she loved kids and helping kids because welcoming them safely into this world was her literal job. But when she eventually had kids of her own, they quickly became the center of her universe. A family member close to them described them as, quote, just beautiful, beautiful children, well cared for. They were just beautiful. That's it. They had a beautiful life. She was not wrong. They did. But then in the months following Callan's birth in May of 2022, something began to happen to Lindsay Clancy mentally, internally. And the medical system, despite repeated attempts to address it, would catastrophically fail to intervene until it was too late. Lindsay had experienced postpartum anxiety after the birth of her second child, Dawson, back in 2019. And it was very difficult and it was very heavy and she really had to learn how to navigate it. But then after Callan's birth in 2022, what she experienced then was categorically different because that, although similar, felt like a worsening decline that was visible to everyone around her and that she herself recognized as a psychiatric emergency that required immediate medical attention. After his birth, Lindsay did not feel well mentally. She ended up extending her maternity leave from the hospital because she just felt too overwhelmed and anxious and she felt like she couldn't manage it only through ordinary coping. Because it felt like it was going from bad to worse. Lindsay was experiencing severe insomnia, meaning nights of no sleep that obviously only made things worse, blurring the buffer that exists between a rational mind and one that is significantly unstable. And let me read you the definition of postpartum psychosis before we keep going, because this is not something that is talked about nearly as much as it should be, and it is not as common as, say, for example, postpartum anxiety or postpartum depression, but it is still something that I feel every single person should know about. And I'm not saying that Lindsay had this for a fact because she wasn't diagnosed with it, but I want to read you the definition and then tell you what she was going through, and you can compare it to the actual definition of the world. I just want you to know what I'm talking about. So, postpartum psychosis is a rare but severe medical emergency that affects a woman's sense of reality, usually starting within the first few days to weeks after childbirth. It involves sudden, extreme symptoms such as hallucinations, delusions, paranoia, rapid mood swings, and profound confusion. So what Lindsay was feeling felt a lot like that, to the point that her and Patrick made the decision to consult a postpartum mental health specialist to ask for help. Lindsay began reaching out to different medical providers on more than one occasion to describe these symptoms that she was experiencing because they felt like they were escalating faster than any of the treatments that she had been prescribed could address. In December of 2022, she allegedly told Patrick that she felt like she needed to be hospitalized for her mental health. On January 1st of 2023, she was admitted to McLean Hospital, one of the most respected psychiatric institutions in the country. But she was discharged after just 5 days. The discharge came with an adjustment to the medications that she had already been taking because they obviously didn't seem to be working. So a doctor there advised her to stop taking 2 or 3 different medications that she had been prescribed and instead prescribed her an antidepressant for sleep. Around this time, she had been prescribed more than 13 different medications in a matter of 4 months. We also learned that at some point, Lindsay also began going to an outpatient program 5 days a week to help with her mental state, and her husband and her close family members were all in the loop and trying to support her as best as they could. Lindsay's defense attorney, Kevin Reddington, would later argue that this revolving door of different doctors, different medications, failed to recognize that her symptoms were not just anxiety, but instead undiagnosed possible bipolar disorder and postpartum psychosis, which he stated ultimately triggered a catastrophic psychiatric break. According to Lindsay's defense, days after she was released from the hospital, she began experiencing hallucinations that were telling her to harm her children. And she also did keep a journal for herself in which she described her mental health struggles, so I assume that that's also something that's going to be brought up in court. But in her head, from what her attorney has stated, it sounds like Lindsay knew 100% that she was not okay. But maybe she didn't quite understand why, because she kept asking for help left and right. She kept getting different medications. Nothing was helping. She kept having these horrible thoughts, but she didn't know what they meant. Because fact of the matter is, when you are in that deep of a mental state, you're not gonna, like, as aware as you might think that you are, you simply are not in the right state of mind to comprehend what you're actually feeling. It's just not gonna happen no matter how much you want it to. And she did ask for help, but there is still that chance that she was not in a stable enough mindset to actually realize that she was in real danger and that her kids were in real danger because of her. Or again, perhaps she had just told so many people so many things over so many months that she no longer believed that anyone would actually help her. Who knows? But what we do know is that she was not officially diagnosed with postpartum psychosis, and Lindsay would go on to commit the worst crimes imaginable. This is a quote from her attorney, quote, "This family was on the road to hell and unfortunately is not coming back. Her husband actually went to the doctor the week before to ask for help and said that you're turning her into a zombie. It was just brutal, a brutal existence that they were living. Her parents were aware of this. They were trying to help out the husband as well. Her husband was never told that he shouldn't leave her alone. I like to think that in this case, it's justice for Lindsay as well. I don't think anyone needs to be lectured about the horrific loss of 3 beautiful babies." So let's go through the events that actually took place the day of the crime, and then it's going to start to make sense why some people look at this and think that this was premeditated, calculated, and not a result of psychosis. So on the morning of Tuesday, January 24th of 2023, Lindsay Clancy took her 5-year-old daughter, Cora, to a pediatrician for an appointment. She talked to the receptionist, the nurses, the doctor, and according to them, she seemed completely fine and normal, and there was no reason to be concerned. When she got home, her 5-year-old daughter, Cora, and her 3-year-old son, Dawson, spent some time outside playing in the snow. She took some pictures of the children playing, and she sent them both to her husband, Patrick, and her mother, still, according to them, showing completely normal behavior and texting normally. That afternoon, she was home with the kids. Patrick, her husband, was also home, but he was working from his home office in the basement. Patrick had been monitoring Lindsay's condition closely for months, but that day, according to him, things had appeared to be shifting slightly back to normal. It was the first day in a while that he felt like Lindsay was actually having a good day and appeared to be doing better than usual. Patrick has stated that he believed that although things were still rocky after being released from the hospital stay, he said that he really started to think that they were over the hardest part and they were only going to go upwards from here on out. According to prosecutors, at 4:13 p.m., Lindsay used Apple Maps on her phone to see how much time the drive would take from her house, their house, to a specific restaurant. At 4:53 p.m., she then texted Patrick asking if he could pick up dinner from said restaurant, saying that she hadn't cooked anything that day because it was a long day. The prosecution believes that this was an unusual request because usually when the family got takeout, they usually ordered from a restaurant that was closer to their house. But that said, the restaurant that Lindsay was asking Patrick to go and pick up food from was a restaurant that they had been to in the past. She also ended up asking him to stop to pick something up at CVS. At 5:15 p.m., Patrick Clancy left their house, leaving Lindsay home alone with the 3 children. 18 minutes later, at 5:33 p.m., Lindsay misses a call from Patrick. She calls him back 1 minute later at 5:34 p.m. and they talk for less than 30 seconds. He was calling because he was unsure of what exactly she needed from CVS, so they clarified and then they ended the call. Patrick has said that it did sound like Lindsay was in the middle of something, but other than that, she seemed to be completely normal on the phone. When Patrick gets home, he gets back home from CVS and from picking up the food, he walks into the house. It's completely silent. He does not see Lindsay, he does not see the children, so he makes their way to their bedroom, but the door is locked. He's able to get it open. He walks in, he sees blood on the ground, notices the window is open, rushes back downstairs and out to the backyard where he finds Lindsay lying on the ground. He frantically begins asking her, "What did you do? What did you do?" To which Lindsay replied to by saying that she had jumped out of the window in an attempt to self-exit. He calls 911 and he can be heard on the phone asking, "Where are the kids?" Lindsay then tells him that they're in the basement. On the 911 call, Patrick can be heard rushing into the house downstairs to the basement, yelling out for his kids. And then all you hear is horrible, loud screaming into the phone. The 911 calls have not been released to the public. They've only been described, but we can assume that those are going to be played in courtroom at trial. The paramedics arrived to their house just after 6 p.m. and very quickly they got to all 3 children. They were unresponsive with obvious signs of trauma, and all 3 were immediately rushed to the hospital. At the hospital, 3-year-old Dawson and 5-year-old Cora were pronounced dead. 8-month-old Callan was in critical condition and he had to be flown to Boston Children's Hospital, but heartbreakingly, just days later, he lost his life as well. Lindsay Clancy had strangled all of her 3 children with exercise bands. In fact, all 3 children still had them wrapped around their necks when Patrick, their father, found them. Afterwards, she had cut both of her wrists before jumping out of the 2nd-story window in an attempt to self-exit. She suffered a lot of injuries, but she did survive. She was taken to the hospital where doctors determined that she was paralyzed from the neck down, and then she was charged for the murders of her 3 children. When Patrick spoke to the authorities at the hospital that day, he had a look of pure devastation on his face for obvious reasons. And he told authorities what I told you, that Lindsay appeared to have been having one of the best days. He just could not understand how something like this could have happened on a day that Lindsay seemed to be happy and hopeful. Lindsay had to stay at the hospital to deal with her injuries, but when she got a chance to try and explain herself to Patrick on a phone call, what she told him was that after he left the house that day, she heard a voice speaking to her. It told her that now was her last chance. It told her that she had to hurt her children to get rid of them and then get rid of herself. Quote, "I lost all control. My body started acting without any control on my part. I was just following commands, all action. This voice demanded action." Another important thing to note is what authorities found when they got a search warrant to go through different electronic devices from the home, because allegedly they found search history from Lindsay researching different ways to kill. So hearing that, it is understandable why people are so divided on this case, because you can look at it in the way of she knew what she was doing. She sent her husband that far away on purpose. She did the math to make sure that she would have enough time to do what she did, and then she tried to self-exit because she didn't want to face the consequences, because she was mentally stable enough to understand that what she did was wrong. But I don't know, you guys. I see both sides. I understand both sides. I want to know what you guys think. I 100,000,000% think that she was absolutely not in a sane state of mind, and I think that it's horrific that she asked for help and tried to get help so many times, doing everything in her power to try and get better, but she was just not given the help that she needed. In the following days, Patrick Clancy experienced a pain that no one should ever have to go through. He felt like he was left with nothing. His children were gone, his wife was hospitalized, paralyzed, and now facing murder charges. The house on Summer Street where he had raised his loving family was now a crime scene. And once the news broke, this very quickly spread all over social media. People were talking about it, immediately putting Lindsay Clancy into categories of either a monster or a victim. And in the middle of all of that, Patrick Clancy did something that kind of took everyone by surprise, because he asked the public to extend his wife Lindsay grace. He posted a message to the community urging for them to try to understand what happened to Lindsay and to not hate her. He did file for divorce, but he also stated, quote, "I wasn't married to a monster. I was married to someone who got sick." And Patrick made it very clear that he forgave Lindsay for what she did, saying that she was a loving wife, a mother, a nurse, and saying that nothing matched her intense love for our kids and dedication for being a mother. It's all she ever wanted. Patrick also filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the providers who treated Lindsay, arguing that their negligence, their failure to recognize a psychiatric emergency, was a proximate cause of his children's deaths. So jury selection for Lindsay's trial began Monday, I believe it was. And like I said in the beginning, this is not a case of did she do it or did she not do it. It's a case of whether she was mentally sane at the time of the crime or in a psychiatric break. Prosecutors will argue that this was premeditated, calculated, and done on purpose, saying that Lindsay acted, quote, with deliberate, premeditated, and extreme atrocity and cruelty. And her defense will argue that she should be found not guilty by reason of insanity. So we'll have to see how this plays out. No matter what your thoughts or feelings are about this case, please remember that 3 beautiful lives were taken way too soon. Just be mindful of that, and please keep it respectful in the comments. Yeah, breaks my heart. It's one of those cases that is heartbreaking no matter what angle you see it from. But that is all for me today. Thank you for spending time with me today. Hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
Okay, so I just finished the OK Storytime episode with Shane Madej, and there's a part where Keon is telling his ghost story to him about an experience his girlfriend had in his house, and I just thought, why not share just my own little experience? So my late husband and I moved into this apartment. I still live in it with my new husband over a decade ago, and when he first moved in, he was like, there's a spirit in here. And he was very, in tune with, like, spirits and supernatural things, etc. And I was just like, I'd never experienced anything. I'd never seen anything myself, so I don't know. But there would be times where he would be, like, napping, and I would hear him go, babe, what do you want? And I'm like, what do you mean? I didn't say anything. He's like, you just called for me. I just heard you were just talking to me. And I'm like, no, I didn't. And it didn't take long for him to realize that it was like this spirit. And he would often tell me, like, I don't want to freak you out, but like, it mimics you. It sounds just like you, and it's talking to me. Nothing crazy. It was not telling him to, like, go like do terrible things. Just like regular things like, babe, hey, wake up, or things like that. And he would often say it was right beside him when he was laying down in bed, and he would open his eyes and there was no one there. And then he would call for me, and then almost every time I would be like, it wasn't me. And it was specifically like, because it's still in the same bedroom, the other side. So I sleep on the side closest to the door. He slept on that side. Blake, my new husband, also sleeps on that side. And he would often say that it was around in the area or that corner, that kind of thing. And I was like, yeah. Maybe, I don't know, 2 or so years into living here, I'm a pretty decent sleeper, but something woke me up. And it was one of those nights where the moon was really full, so a lot of light was coming through, and we'd have blackout curtains then. It's one of the reasons we have blackout curtains now. And then there's like a lamp just a little bit down there, so a lot of light tends to come in, so everything was really illuminated. And I immediately went, something's watching me. And my eyes go to the door, and in the doorway, right, everything's really illuminated. Like, I can see very clearly a human like figure, a shadow figure in the doorway, but it's not like normal sized. It's taking up the entire doorway, but not like width, length, like tall. It's tall. And it's just standing there. And I scream. Actually, I'm screaming. Wake poor Jason up. He's like freaking out. What's wrong? And I'm like, I saw it. I don't know how I went back to sleep that night. The next day, I don't know how to explain it, but I had this overwhelming sense of whatever the spirit is in the apartment felt bad that it scared me, almost like a sense of I'm sorry is what I felt like. That's what that was the feeling I kept getting, like I'm sorry vibes. I don't know how else to explain it. Even when I saw it, I didn't feel threatened. I didn't feel in danger or like it was gonna hurt me or wanted to hurt me, that kind of thing. It was curious, I think. And Jason was really in tune with the supernatural and spirits. And he would have told me if it was evil or something. And I think the reason that he was able to hear it, or was able to communicate with him, because he was so open and in tune with all of that. So it was able to communicate with him versus me, who's not. And then I, of course, saw it. I've never seen it again. Never seen them again. Also, fun fact, we got a cat, Bella May. She's gonna be 12 next year. And when she was really little, still till today, not as much since she's
so listen to me.
Gotten older. But she would have moments where she would just be standing still and she would like go and like arch, do her back and jump up in the air, and she still does it off and on. And I was like, oh, that's so odd. I wonder why she does that. And Jason would be like, well, the ghost is petting her, the spirit's petting her. And I used to like, oh yeah, laugh that off. But then after my experience, I was like, yeah, they're petting her. They're petting her. And that's the other reason that I don't, the feeling also, but like also, we have animals, and especially the girls, the cats, they aren't scared. They aren't freaking out. They're not like terrified. They're just whoever it is in the house, So last winter, my husband, who was my fiance at the time, texted me. I was at work. I worked third shift. And he was like, is there something in this house, in this apartment? And I was like, what are you talking about? And again, I haven't seen hide nor hair of this entity since many, many years ago. And I forgot it was even in here, to be honest. Like, that's how little, there's like nothing. And he's like, well, Bella May is just, again, that corner of the bedroom. She likes to sit sometimes. Like right now, she's at the corner of the bed and she's like facing that corner, looking. So they're probably there right now listening to me. But he was like, she's just sitting there, she's just staring at the corner. And that's the other thing, like, she's not terrified, her fur isn't raised, like, she's not like hissing, and like, it's very much, she's just like watching. She's curious. Just like they're curious too, right? So I'm like, I'm trying to calm him down. No. And then I remember, light goes off. And then I'm like, no, there's another house. And I lied. And then he has an experience with the entity, where he saw them. He said he saw them in the corner of the room looking at him. And later I was like, where exactly did you see them? And he didn't see them in the corner. They were like right there beside the bed. What? But again, I think curious. They're like, look, a new man's in the house. Who's this? But yeah, that's my little ghost story. Yeah.
The ghost in my house keeps knocking stuff off my walls. It knocked this case of clowns off my walls. It knocked this Ouija board off my walls. And a lot of y'all are saying because it knocked the Ouija board off that it wants to talk to me. So, I did the most logical thing. I bought another Ouija board and put it on my wall. So now, if he knocks this one over, maybe I'll talk to them. Maybe. And why do I say maybe if I have these ghosts in my house? I think the one knocking the shit over is a bad one. I do have a couple bad ones in my house. I'm just a girl. So if you're listening to me, motherfucker, if you really want to talk to me, knock that Ouija board over. I'm pointing to it. It has knocked this one over twice, but I'm a little stupid, so I don't get the picture. If it knocks over the new one, then I'll understand. Let me make this clear. I am not giving y'all permission to knock down anything else off of my goddamn walls. Y'all understand? Do you understand? Do you understand? These ones are good, but do you understand? This guy on the ground. I put him on the ground, by the way. He used to be over there. No, he's too bad. He's going on the fucking ground. Do you understand? No, it's actually this one that I think is doing it. This one is so negative. This one is human. It's a human spirit, but he sucks. He sucks. And you're probably wondering, why do I have that in my house? Because I'm insane. I'm insane, all right? He sucks. They suck. And this one sucks. I think all the other ones are nice. They might be lying to me, but I'm just going to say that they're nice for now until they prove me wrong.